What an honor, honestly, for me personally, to welcome you to Riyadh, the vibrant capital, the city that is rapidly emerging as a global symbol for transformation and prosperity. So tell me, what excites you more being here in Saudi Arabia at this time and here in the Real Estate Future Forum 2025?
Well, first of all, I have always felt drawn to this country. I've always liked it, and I had a very good relationship with the kings of Saudi Arabia and the governments with which I worked when I was president, and I've been back a lot since. But not in 8 years. So I've seen all these changes, and I think the lesson is that we should be trying to do something like this everywhere. So a lot of countries don't have oil, but they all have something. And I think that the ability to develop human potential will determine the future. And I think we need to, and I have a very different view of this than some people, but I think that we need to learn how to develop win-win solutions so that the people we do business with will do well and we can all grow together. The great reaction that's occurring all over the world, ironically, is because the prosperity, the unparalleled prosperity of the last several years has not been broadly shared. And I think that the thing that Saudi Arabia is doing now in 1,000 ways, developing the tourism potential of the country, for example, will provide more opportunities for more people to live up to the fullest of their capacities, and I think that's very important.
Absolutely. It's the core of everything. Well, let me take you back. You have visited Saudi Arabia multiple times over the years, 1994, 2002, 2003, 2009, 10, and 11, and now 2025. What is actually defining the major transformation for you here in this country?
Well, I think you've had both good leadership and buy-in from the people. So it seems to me that most people I talk to since I've been here have really bought in to your leader's view of developing a much more broad base for the economy so that you use your oil resources to diversify the income, including energy, but also in many, many other areas. And I think that if you look at the United States, for example, one of the real problems in America has been that the capital investments have been highly uneven and not sustained over a long period of time. And our people are pretty well divided 50-50 politically, and that has made it harder than it should have been to develop sustained economic policies and social policies that will lift everyone and bring them together. And in countries where the elections are divided, the winner often is the person who's most successful at placing blame. Who's to blame for all this? But that doesn't tell you what to do about it. And I think that for the next 20 years or so, the most success will go to the countries who answer the how question. That is, if you talk to most politicians anywhere in the world, whatever kind of system they come from, they often talk about how much money you're going to spend, whether it's on a program or a tax cut or something else, and who will benefit. But very few people talk about how do you propose to do whatever it is you're doing that maximizes the benefits to the largest number of people. And I think answering the how question is really important. And the thing that's impressed me so much in this brief stay I've had in Saudi Arabia is how a lot of people are going about whatever their job is, whatever their mission is. And I think that you will see 5 years from now, for example, the rewards that go to the countries that focus on how to maximize the potential of your people and your natural and other resources. So it's going to be a very exciting period, and it could lead finally to what I thought the 21st century was going to be about, which is a period of unprecedented peace, prosperity, and cooperation. But we have to realize when people get in trouble, stirring up the populace to be angry about something may provide enormous short-term benefits, but it solves no long-term problems. So our leaders have to find a way to inspire us to do things that lift people up and bring them together.
Absolutely, and answering the how starts with a bold vision, and this will lead me to the Saudi Vision 2030. It's considered one of the most ambitious plans in the modern history. How do you see this vision, Mr. President, shifting the narrative of leadership and change globally over the next decade?
I think first of all, I think it's very important. And secondly, I think it's worth investing in, both by the people of Saudi Arabia who have the means to do it, and the government, and by anybody from the outside that you welcome into the country to be a part of it. But about 11 years ago, I read an amazing book by a man who now has passed away, but he was almost 90 when E.O. Wilson wrote a book called The Social Conquest of Earth. And Wilson was famous in America for being the foremost expert on ants. He was a microbiologist from the state of Alabama who lived most of his life in Massachusetts. But he basically said if you look at all of history, including what we know now of our pre-human ancestors, the most successful species that have ever lived were ants, termites, bees, and people.
Interesting. Because
they were successful in the sense that they found a way to avoid being exterminated, to endure, and they did it through habits of cooperation, which just evolved in ants, termites, and bees. That is, as far as we know, they don't have any consciousness. And he said people are the most successful because they have consciousness and a conscience. And so when they get right up to the point of self-destruction, they step back because their conscience kicks in. That's what we have to worry about now. We have to worry about how to keep being positive and how to see solutions that help as many people as possible. And to me, it's fascinating. The older I get, the more I'm interested in examples that are very small, like ants, termites, and bees,
Ants and bees.
or what we're learning from the human genome. If you look in this rather interesting crowd, every difference you can see that is not age-related is located in about 0.5% of our genome. And yet most of us spend 99.5% of our time worried about that 0.5%. We have to figure out how to connect it to the larger world.
Absolutely. Well, speaking of connectivity, in 2018, you met with His Royal Highness, the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. How do you see the momentum of the Saudi-US relations, and how can actually both nations break new grounds, in your opinion?
Well, first of all, we always had, at least in my time and since then, pretty close relations with the Saudi government, because in the Cold War era, we provided security guarantees and the Saudis kept us moving with the oil. Now, America's a very large oil producer, and we like it when there's enough energy to promote stable prices and fuel economic growth. But I think that we, Americans, should come here and study this 2030 plan and ask ourselves, what is our equivalent? What do we want America to look like in 10 years or 20 years or 30 years? And you might imagine that I don't really agree that immigration is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. And since America has a negative birth rate of 1.7 per thousand, unless you believe artificial intelligence is going to do all the work, we need to find a way to get along better than we're getting along right now.
How to compete
and
in this.
I'm doing what I can to support that.
All right, well, let's talk about relationships. You and Jerry Anzarello have shared a really long-standing bond.
We've been friends a long time.
He's here, watching
see him in
you,
the front row.
sending you all the love. Well, his role as a founding advisory board member of the Clinton AIDS Foundation, to his current leadership role as the group CEO of the Dir'iyah Gate Company in Saudi Arabia. First of all, did you visit Dir'iyah?
Excuse me?
Dir'iyah? Did you visit Dir'iyah?
Yes.
Yeah? Tell me about it. How did you find Dir'iyah?
Last night?
Yeah, last night? Oh, yes?
I thought it was breathtaking. And I saw a lot of the buildings that have now been modernized and changed years and years ago, so I could remember very clearly what it was like before all this started. And I think that it's sort of a metaphor for what people can do if they free themselves to imagine a future and then come up with a plan that gives everyone something to do to advance that future. It's amazing.
Absolutely.
I think you should all be very proud.
We are so proud.
You should be.
Well, let me just take you back. Let's revisit a pivotal moment in your life. 24 years ago, on January 18, 2001, you delivered your final address to the nation from the Oval Office. You spoke these memorable words. Let me reflect them. My days in the office are nearly through, but my days of service, I hope, are not. In the years ahead, I will never hold a position higher or a covenant more sacred than that of the President of the United States. But there is No title I will wear more proudly than that of a citizen. So here's the question. What is the most fulfilling part of just being a citizen today, and what do you miss mostly about being a president?
Well, first of all, I control my time more. So I have focused on helping countries all over the world in natural disasters because I had a lot of experience with that as a president and before that when I was governor of my home state. And we were able to pioneer a revolutionary way to lower drug prices for poor countries with big disease problems and get the medicine delivered in ways that saved millions of lives just because it was so much cheaper. And I started working with the companies in India, the suppliers in China, and one company in South Africa to change the whole market for life-saving medicine because it used to operate like a jewelry store. That is, it was a low volume, high profit margin, uncertain payment business. So as a result, people were dying like flies because the system was not organized to achieve what should be achieved, which is keep as many people alive and healthy as possible. And we changed the whole model to a massive volume, low profit margin per unit, but absolutely certain and prompt payment business. And Jerry helped me start that. But
amazing.
There are now, my little foundation negotiates contracts for more than half of the almost 30 million people who get AIDS drugs every year, and 75% of all the children that are kept alive. And we learned what else we needed to do. So once we found there's something else we needed to do, we figured out how to do that. But I think people who work in the nonprofit section should work with government and with the private sector wherever possible to do things faster, cheaper, and at higher quality. And it can be done. So that's what I've done in my life. I was always fascinated when I was the governor of my little state about how to do things. And I would hear people give all these great speeches about this bad thing or that good thing, but almost nobody ever talked about how to do it.
It's always about how.
Yes.
How.
And to do that, you have to be prepared, because I don't have to have any press coverage anymore.
Yeah.
It's
Lucky you.
in other words, if you have to get attention every day in politics, if you're running the show like your leader is here, you can do that. But if you're not, you have to decide, well, I still want attention, so you can say outrageous things, but you may not get anything done. I think the most important thing is when your life is all said and done, is whether people are better off than they were when you started, whether children have a brighter future, and whether we're coming together instead of being torn apart. I think all the rest is background music. And if you think about it, everybody who's in this audience today is always keeping score about their lives. We all are.
We all do.
I often think if I had had the body of a great athlete like LeBron James, I would have gone into a different line of work.
But you're still fit.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you take good care of yourself.
But, I mean, we think about it. We all keep score all the time.
Yeah.
And so I think every human being should think hard
And
about
figure
how
the
they
house.
keep score.
Yes. Well, when it's all done and all said, how do you want to be remembered by history? Not just as the president, but as Bill Clinton as a person. What part of your life you thrive to define your legacy?
Well, I have no control over that, but I think about it because I would like for people to know that I was just, I came from a very ordinary background. I'm the last president of the United States who ever lived in a house without indoor plumbing.
Oh,
When I lived on a farm when I was a kid. And it's a great story to tell in politics because people think you rose on your own, which is not true. Nobody, as one of my friends who was the leader of my party at one time, Robert Strauss, said, every American politician wants the voters to believe that he or she was born in a log cabin they built themselves. But that's not true.
yeah,
Every
for sure.
one of us who amounts to anything either had somebody to help them, a teacher, a parent, someone who gave them their first job opportunity. And I think that I just wanted to be said that I had a chance because I figured out how to do things better, faster, and cheaper to save a lot of lives, create a lot of jobs, and give our kids a better future, and to advance the cause of peace. I also believe that politics is competitive. You can only have one person in one position at one time. But in the end, you need a larger vision that will lift everyone. That's what I like about your 2030 plan. Everybody in this country can find something they can do as the vision is implemented.
Exactly.
That they could not do beforehand. Some way to enrich their lives, and not just financially, but personally and emotionally as well. And I really think when young people come to me and they ask, I want to be in politics, what should I do and all that, and I said, first you have to have a vision.
It all starts with the vision.
You have to have a strategy for achieving that vision. You have to compete if you have to win an election. But in the end, when it's all said and done, the way you keep score is whether other people were helped, not whether you were. And I think I always tell every young person I talk to, you're going to keep score in your life. You're keeping score right now in ways large and small. Think about it and write it down and adjust it over the course of your life so you're comfortable with the way you're keeping score. You won't succeed all the time. You won't win every fight. You'll disappoint yourself from time to time. But if you're keeping score in the right way and working for it, you'll get good results and you'll be happier.
And let's not forget to work like bees and ants collaboratively.
Yes.
Absolutely. Well, let's go back to what your mother taught you. She taught you to never give up, to remember your roots, and to show compassion for those less fortunate. This clearly resonates in your philanthropy journey. Since 2001, the Clinton Foundation has transformed lives globally. So how does giving back through philanthropy compare to the sense of accomplishment as a president?
As a president?
Yeah, if you would compare both.
Well, when I was president, I had a wider range of responsibilities. And there was something that could be done every day to help somebody. Now I can concentrate on fewer things and I can literally count the number of people that have been helped. But when we started the Clinton Global Initiative 20 years ago this year, I just thought there were a lot of meetings like Davos, which I respect, where people go and listen and talk, but nobody ever asked anybody to do anything. And so we started having a meeting saying, if you come to our meeting, you have to make a commitment to do something. There's no minimum, you don't have to be wildly wealthy, you don't have to do anything specific, but you do have to show that you care about something and be willing to come back over the course of the year and say how you're doing on your commitment. And pretty soon, most of the people who worked with me were bright young people who devoted themselves to helping people find partners, so that if somebody had a good idea but no money, they'd find somebody who had some money but didn't want to waste it on a bad idea, and put them together, and then they would work on how to do it and report back. And we now can document, according to independent reviews, not me, that more than 500 million people have derived some benefit from these 20 years of commitments that have been made.
Impressive.
And they feel good about it. People like it when they do something that makes a difference. That's why I think so many Saudi leaders are excited about the 2030 plan. People want to believe that in a life that is always too short, even if it lasts 100 years, that you made a difference.
Yes.
It's not complicated, but I think that I see a lot of people who have defeated other people in one way or the other, but they're not necessarily happy because when they won, they were still trying to play the same game. And when you have responsibilities, you have to try for win-win solutions. You have to try for things that lift people up and bring them together. And I think, as I get older, it's about the only thing I'm still interested in. I still have a lot of energy for that. I like it.
Yeah, we can feel that. Is there a moment in your philanthropic journey that really touched you deeply and changed the way you see the world around you?
Oh, yeah, many. But,
can you list a few?
But you mentioned my mother and her father had an amazing influence on me, and I'll just tell you one story. My grandfather had two jobs that I loved, and my father was killed in a car wreck before I was born, so my grandfather was the primary male influence in my life when I was young. He was first, before there were refrigerators, they were called ice boxes, and they really were. And so every little town had its own ice plant, and we made ice. And my grandfather, who was 5'8" and weighed about 150 pounds, would carry 100-pound blocks of ice on his back and deliver them to people. And during the Depression, he just found kids and paid them basically about $0.25 a day to work for him. And I kept running into these kids. Then he had a little grocery store before we had any national food assistance programs or any of these things. And so my grandfather would feed people when they had no money, as long as they were working. And so I kept hearing all these stories after I grew up about people who had, almost all of them were black, and had bought food from my grandfather, and he would just tell them to come back and pay him when they could. So in 2016, 66 years, 66 years from my first encounters when I went to the grocery store with my grandfather in 1950. I was in a town in Ohio, and it had a famous barber shop where all the politics took place and people talked and met. And I was driving a little bus in there campaigning for my wife when she was running for president. And there was a man on the side of the road with a large cross, so I could tell he was a black minister. And he was just standing there, and I said, I think we should stop and talk to this guy. There's a reason he's standing on the outskirts of town. 66 years later, and I lived in a town of 6,000 people a long, long way from this place in Ohio. And I got out and shook hands, and he said, Mr. President, I'm going to save you some time. I'm for Hillary. I was always for you because I'm the proud grandson of Luther Black of Hope, Arkansas.
Wow.
This minister, I knew what he was going to say. And he
What a
said, my
moment.
grandfather called me when you ran for president and said, you know, Bill Clinton's grandfather fed us when we had no food. And we were working after World War II, and we often didn't get paid every week. We worked all the time. And he said, my grandfather said I was in that store one day looking at the food, and then Governor Clinton's grandfather said, Luther, you need to feed your family, and you have no food. You have no money, do you? He said, no, I just didn't get paid this week. I'll get paid eventually. He said, will you take what you need and sign for it? Because anybody who was willing to work to feed his family deserves to be able to do it. And he said, you know, his grandfather didn't have much more money than we did, but he found a way to feed the town and still keep the store going. And he said to me, he said, I want you to support Governor Clinton because if he's half the man his grandfather was, he'll be a great president.
Wow.
And he said, and I feel the same way about Hillary. She's a great senator from New York, and I think she should be president. And that's not the point. The point is
The moral of the story.
that's the way the world works better, when people can trust each other, when they don't. And my mother, when my grandfather died, he was only 57. He had a chronic lung problem. But she found all those notes, and the people who paid him back, and some of the people who never paid him back. And they became family treasures for us
Of course.
because we all wanted to be like my grandfather.
Looking up to him.
And it was amazing. And there I was, I confess, I was crying when this man finished talking to me because I thought, here we're talking about electing a president and what a big deal it is. And for this man, the first thing was, do you really care about other people?
Yes, you do.
And do you believe in work for everybody? And do you believe in everybody's potential to do something? And it's the most moving thing that's happened to me in a long time.
This is so beautiful to hear. And if they say, they would say you got it from your grandpapa.
Yeah, I loved him. The other day, I also used to go out and sleep in the back seat of his car because he had another job as being a night watchman at a sawmill. And all of our sawmills today, they're mostly big timber companies that do all this work. But back when I was a boy, there were a lot of independent lumbermen who brought their timber to this sawmill to be cut and shaped And my grandfather was a night watchman, so I'd go out there and spend the night climbing in mountains of sawdust and looking at the stars. And all those things shaped
Yeah, who you
me.
are today. Absolutely. And having devoted so much to the humanitarian work, do you feel that you have done enough good and good enough for humanity, or do you still thrive for more in the coming
Oh,
years?
no, look, if you get to be president, especially if you grow up the way I did, the chances were 1 in millions, that I would have ever gotten to do this. I don't think that you can ever stop. As long as I can go and be helpful to somebody, I'll do it. And I don't care anymore about whether there are Republicans or Democrats in America or whether they have different systems around the world. If they ask and we can work together, I try to help when I can.
Amazing. Well, I don't want to finish this conversation, but I have to. I know you have a tight schedule. And to culminate this dialogue, a bold dialogue indeed, if you had the chance to give an advice to young Saudis, the young leaders of tomorrow, what do you want them to hear from you?
That for most of human history, people had no choice in the work they did. And Saudi Arabia is not just the wealth, but even more important now, the visionary leadership and the plan are going to create millions and millions of opportunities for people to choose what they do with their waking hours. And I was raised right after the Great Depression, and most of the people I knew had jobs that were pretty well set out, and they had to do them. Now you're committed to building an education system, a training system, building the infrastructure, including the digital one, that will give people an unprecedented range of choices about what they do with their lives. That should be seen as a great gift that millions and millions of people who preceded us didn't have. They didn't have that choice. And even young people of very modest means should feel fortunate to know that if they work hard and they get educated in the work they want to do, that they will have these choices. And that should make every day exciting and life feel more worth living. And if you suffer setbacks, that's life. But you have to get up, you have to keep going, and you have to realize that every day you're making these choices. Even if you pretend you're not, you are. And I think that's the one thing I always try to impress on young people, that it's a gift to be able to decide what to do with your waking hours. And even if you have a job that you have to take because you're helping your family or you need to do it, how you do that job and how you relate to people and what you learn from the people you come in contact with, it's a choice. And the one thing I really feel here now is that the whole country feels like it's on a mission.
Yes.
And
believing in it.
So there's something for everybody to do. I think I was counting the other day. I've done something like, I don't know, in my life to earn money, probably 24 different jobs. But I learned something from every one of them. And every time I did something like that, I had more choices about what I did next.
Yes,
and
it opens doors.
That's what you want for people. You want people to feel that life is worth living, it's inherently rewarding, and if you do whatever it is you're supposed to do well, you touch other people as well as your family.
Amazing. This is really inspiring, and it's been my honor to have this sit down and navigate this conversation with you, Mr. President. I'm pretty sure it's going to resonate with me for a very long time. Thank you so much. It's been a great honor and really big pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause to the 42nd President of the United States, Mr. Bill Clinton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
On stage for one moment. Please stay on stage for one moment. I'd like to invite Mr. Abdullah Al-Harbi, the CEO of the Real Estate Future Forum, to come and join us because they have a token of their appreciation they'd like to share with you. And could we also, while we're waiting for Mr. Abdullah, give a massive round of applause to Ms. Wiam, because she's done an amazing job again. Ms. Wiam Adakhil, an amazing moderation. Thank you so much.